Evening, everyone, and welcome. We'll get underway. First, I'd like to acknowledge we're meeting on the land of the Wongal people, the Eora Nation, and to acknowledge their stewardship of this country through many millennia. And they have a lot that they can teach us. As the slide shows, we've got a very special guest tonight, Sean Maxwell. For those who aren't familiar with Renew, this is just some background. We publish the two magazines, Sanctuary and Renew. We have our own branch Facebook page, and we also record these meetings, and we have videos of the meetings that we've done over the last 2 years. And we've been supported in that work by the Inner West Council, which is most appreciated. So now I'd like to welcome Sean Maxwell. Sean is representing the ATTMA, which is the Australian Airtightness Testing and Measurement Association. Sean, since he's been in Australia, has done a lot to raise awareness about airtightness and condensation and ventilation within buildings. To an industry that really didn't know much about it. And he gave a presentation for us about 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, he's still, going on doing a lot of training. He has vast experience with blower door testing, and we are very lucky to have him speak to us tonight. So I'd like to welcome Sean. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean. Talking to you from ATTMA, the Airtightness Testing and Measurement Association. All right, so I'm going to talk about airtight, healthy, and energy efficient homes. Emphasis on the healthy and energy efficiency. I mean, I talk about airtightness all the time, mostly because that's what I get stuck talking about. It's like building science 101. Don't build a leaky building. It's one of the pretty plain things you can ask. So where does ATTMA come from? We're basically trying to advocate for better building science integration into codes and regulations. We have a report coming out very soon. It's for final review with CSIRO's internal committees and things. We did a project with CSIRO testing more than 200 homes across Australia to find the average airtightness of new dwellings in Australia. So the main, I'll just cut to the chase, what the main findings are. We have, I'd say it's actually the results are in a very good place, which is not that they're good, but they're also not so horrible that you lose hope that you can do anything about it. So it's basically like we have the tools we need to do a lot better than we're doing right now. So it's basically right at the spot where you'd say, all right, you know what? This is within reach. We can do something about this. So I'm really excited to see that come out. And I hope to talk to you all about it when I can. So let's get into some of the things I want to talk to you about, maybe tease your brains about condensation, because that's always a hot topic. Maybe you would have some things to say about this. Like, are these things about these all truths or myths? So water always flows downhill. Is that true? I don't know. Energy efficiency improvements always lead to energy savings. Is that true? Tighter buildings are more at risk of condensation. Ventilation always helps condensation problems, or more ventilation. And heat recovery ventilators always save energy. Is that true? Zoning your house always helps, and thermal mass always helps. A lot of these things that were sort of told over the years are true, but I want to touch on all of these and see if they really are totally true. I'll tell you, I'm going to try to plug as many sources of inspiration as I can throughout this talk. So one of them is Alison Bales from who runs Energy Vanguard. He has an excellent blog, energyvanguard.com/blog. It's great, really good building science, very well put and digestible pieces. And he also has an excellent book. There's talked a local supplier into stocking the book, and he's he needs to tell them to make up for the investment. It's an excellent book for you on what is building. There's some basic concepts of building science. Really, really solid stuff. Very well illustrated, very well researched, and very well written. So I highly recommend this book. I have a copy myself, and I have looked at it on the topic of vapor barriers and vapor retarders in construction. So one of the things that Alison Bell's quotes is Canadian Gus Handegord once said, the three biggest problems in buildings are water, water, and water. And I would agree. So how do we get on top of this problem? We got water from three sources. Some of you may have seen this slide before. We get water from vapor diffusion, water from air leakage, and water from liquid. And in terms of, and we try to control them with control layers: water control layer, air control, vapor control, and thermal control layers. I'll talk about thermal control layers and then how these vectors get water into your building. But just so you know, let's put this in some sort of context here. Like, how big are these problems? So water vapor does get through building materials through vapor diffusion, through solid materials. What you'd think of as a solid material, like a membrane. It can pass right through a membrane. It can pass right through a plastic bag. It can pass right through metal. Very slowly, but it does pass. So, but much, much faster than that, we get water by air leakage. So what happens is you have a vapor control layer, like a nice, expensive, fancy membrane, but then you get, it's not well joined, and you get a gap between successive layers of it, and you have air going right around your vapor control layer, and it brings a lot of moisture with it. Like, I'll just say 100 times more moisture, just picking numbers out of the sky here. And then obviously liquid water, rain, you get heaps more water from liquid, either from above or below. And that's why liquid water control really is your number one priority, keeping your building dry. I know that sounds obvious, but it's not very well done very frequently. And air leakage is way more important than worrying about vapor diffusion. If you control most of the air movement, you control most of the water vapor movement. So here's some a good resource for you if you're curious about this. A lot of this does apply to existing buildings, obviously, but really think about the fundamentals of how you maintain good indoor environmental conditions. There's a appendix in this report from the EPA in the US about the pen test. Red pen test would be how you draw a straight line or draw a continuous line around the location of the air control layer in your building assemblies, walls, roof, and floor. How do you keep the air in it from going in and out of your building? That's your red pen test. And you could do a blue pen test and say, how do we keep liquid water from always draining out and away from my building, please? Or from coming up from the ground. And a purple pen test, you might say, would be where you draw your thermal barrier, where you would say that the how do we keep the interior surfaces always warm enough that they avoid condensation? So control layers. So you'll hear these things. Actually, think about passive house. We hear about passive house, and for good reason. It's held up as the pinnacle of building science. And what are the main concepts of it? It's some simple things like low energy demand, super airtightness. So you need super insulation to save energy. You need good ventilation. You need super airtightness, and you need to minimize thermal bridging. So it's all about energy efficiency, but also it really is about reducing your risk of water. A lot of these things, so insulation is great, but if you don't have super airtightness to keep air from passing through your insulated assemblies, you're gonna get condensation because what insulation does is prevent heat flow from inside to out or from outside to in, and that might make some of the surfaces in your building assembly colder than the dew point. So airtightness is all about reducing. It's a bit about energy savings, but it's a lot about reducing the liability of building something so hyper insulated that it's actually risky. super insulation is actually a riskier assembly. So you use airtightness to de-risk that assembly. Same thing with thermal bridging. Why they pay so much attention to thermal bridging in passive house? Yes, it's about energy efficiency, but it's even more about minimizing the potential for damage due to water. So, and also ventilation is also about diluting the moisture that gathers in your building over time from just, well, life. So there's lots of causes of condensation. So Graham, can't wait to hear you talk more about getting rid of gas or other fuels and going to electric. I'm there. I want to be part of that revolution of go electric, electrify our economy, because I think there's many benefits to that. One of the things that burning methane does is it makes directly carbon dioxide and water vapor. That water has to go somewhere, preferably outside, because along with the other sources of moisture, if it's allowed to reach cold surfaces in your building, it can cause condensation and other bad things. So what are the solutions to this? Opening windows, maybe some fans, maybe hopefully not having to resort to the one on the bottom right, dehumidifiers, but in some cases, yes, that's needed in one way or another. So in some climates, it's really a good idea. So when we look at assemblies here, I've got some slides here about control layers and which control layer is, we'll try to pinpoint where these problems are coming from. So in this case, here's a brand new building south of Sydney, and they're getting buckets of condensation on it. Single pane, aluminum framed glass, and they get condensation and nasty mold already. The building's only a couple years old. So what control layer is failing here? Anyone want to take a guess? I don't know if it's possible for you guys to pipe in. Is it possible for them to pipe in, Doug or Graham?
Not particularly.
Okay. Then I'll have to fill in the blanks here. I'll just pretend someone shouted. That's right. It's the problem here is thermal control. So water control, yes, even if the water's not coming from inside, it's not like we were dripping water from the shower onto the windows. The water's not coming from the outside either. Not a water control layer problem. It's not an air control layer problem either. There's no air going in and out of this window. It's not vapor control either. The aluminum and the glass are perfect vapor barriers. So what is happening is this is the thermal control layer problem. The aluminum frame is poorly insulated, so it takes whatever heat from the inside and transmits it very efficiently outside. And so that loss of heat makes that surface, brings it closer to the outdoor temperature. So it's colder below the dew point. So thermal control layer problem here is making this condensation problem. That's what thermal bridging is all about. That's what Passive House is obsessed with thermal bridging, because this happens if you don't pay attention to it. So there's different ways you could fix this particular problem. You could add continuous ventilation to dilute the interior moisture. Yes, that's a good idea. Or you can do another thing. You could add heat to this assembly here. There's two ways you could add heat to this assembly. You could turn up the heat in your house. Just warm it up, warm it right up. Just turn it up. And at some point, you're going to stop getting condensation on your walls. If we are all complaining about condensation in our houses, it's because we are just too cheap to spend enormous amounts of energy to warm our houses up above the dew point. If you add enough heat, your house will become above the dew point and you won't get condensation anymore. Now, is that a reasonable thing to ask, that we just dump unlimited amounts of energy to keep our houses above the dew point? No, it's not. So the other way you can add heat or keep those surfaces warmer is to improve the thermal performance. So this single pane window is prone to condensation because it's not keeping the heat on the inside and keeping the interior surfaces of that above the dew point. Improve the thermal efficiency, you will reduce condensation potential here. So newer homes get more condensation because they can be more airtight, which makes interior moisture harder to dilute. And also, a lot of them still have pretty poor thermal performance. This is a brand new house, or was a brand new apartment building. Lots of apartments were complaining about condensation and mold, and it's because of the very poor thermal performance. So Here, this is actually going to be a bit of a personal presentation here about places I've lived and the problems I've lived with. So here's this is a real estate picture of our apartment. It doesn't look like this in reality. I mean, oh, look, oh, here we go. Yes, you get add and remove furniture like this. If you look at the picture closely enough, you can see they actually just doctored this right in. It's just, I don't know how they can do this, make it look that nice, because in reality, it's not that nice. It was a great place to live. It was near Bondi, 15 minutes walk from a beautiful beach and cliffs, just gorgeous, but it doesn't look like that picture. So what do we have? What did we have when we were living there? This is what we had. Lots of condensation. When our son was born, we had the crib cot right by the bed so we could deal with him in the middle of the night. And yep, we got lots of condensation. This is a sad face I drew on condensation on the window in my room. Me, being a building science addict, thought, oh, look at this. Look at these. As soon as I got there, I was like, look at these vents here. We don't need these vents. I'm going to tape over these vents. So I got out my tape and I taped them over. And in the first winter, we got tons of condensation. So, and we got condensation and we got mold. So what was the problem? Was the problem that I taped up these vents? Well, maybe a bit, but if I did remove the tape, but still got condensation. Why is that? It wasn't only the vents that were doing this. It wasn't only that this was under ventilated. This apartment, I tested it. There's a permeability of about 19 cubic meters per hour per square meter. So that's about double what the NCC 2019 would say would prove that your house is well sealed, which is a permeability of 10 cubic meters per hour per square meter. So it's pretty leaky, pretty leaky. Just for comparison, similar climate in the US would have code mandated maximum for a new build of 3. So it's quite a bit leakier, 6 times leakier than building code in North America. So what is up? Where did the mold show up in our house? You can't really see it in this picture on the top right here, but it showed up in the clothes. We open up the drawers and it just gets a musty smell, and we just always sneezing. I don't know, always just sneezing. You have a cold and the cold just lingers for a while. Why doesn't the cold go away? Well, this is a camping mat here. I thought, oh, yeah, well, nice. I can just slip these camping mats in here, tuck that out of the way. There's no storage in the place. So here's an IKEA wardrobe here. Let's just tuck that right in there. Very smart there, Sean. No, very dumb. I'm sure there's people in the audience who would say, Sean, you're not supposed to do that. Don't put stuff against the walls. And I learned this the hard way. Don't put stuff against the walls. Why is that? Because you need ventilation around the back of your IKEA cabinets. Here's the back of this thing now being digested by different species of mold. So this is quite a digestible material, this MDF backing of this thing. And it's not that the polyester of this is digestible, it's that the dust and dirt that collects with camping mats, which you can't really see, but is there, is the organic material in that dust is being digested by the mold. So the problem isn't that this was underventilated. Well, in fact, actually behind this, it was underventilated because whatever moisture was in the apartment during some weather, it was not able to escape. So how do we do? How do we deal with this? Do we just stop breathing and stop adding over the span of a night? My wife and I would add 1 liter of water to the air in the bedroom. Do we increase ventilation, leave the door open? What do we do to do this? So I told you I took the tape off of the vents, and did that help? Nope. And how about more ventilation? Let's just add more ventilation, right? Everyone's talking about we need more ventilation. It's quite a common sight to see these windows here tilted way open and more vents, more ventilation. Ventilation is what you need. Our houses are just too tight. We need more ventilation. Well, is that really going to help us? You could just ventilate the heck out of this place, and what do you get? you get condensation in there. So what are we going to do? We get condensation on the walls, condensation on the ceiling. We get little traces of mold on the ceiling in this place. It's ventilated, I can tell you. It's well ventilated. Is that the problem, that it's not ventilated? Maybe we should just stop showering. Maybe that's the problem, actually. We should just do a damp cloth. Let's do that, because more ventilation. Look at it. Gross. This is my toothbrush. I did not use that toothbrush, and I'm glad that this is the only time that cockroach has ever come to munch on little microscopic food bits on my toothbrush. I'm glad that was the only time that ever happened, right? So I threw that toothbrush out, and thank goodness it never happened again. We all can be confident in that. Well, is the problem that we don't have enough ventilation? Did we make this apartment too airtight? Heck no, it's not too airtight. It's not underventilated. The thing we weren't doing was basically we were not heating the place enough that it could be above the dew point. This bathroom, if we added more ventilation, it's not going to help. But if we added heat, this would warm the surfaces above the dew point, and we would not get condensation on the surfaces. So does anyone like the idea of just dumping heat into this place where we couldn't close these windows? They don't show you in the real estate pictures. The reason they're propped open in this picture is that the windows didn't actually close. You couldn't pull them shut. They were old windows. So is that the solution? Just dumping lots of heat in there? Well, it would work. No one's going to do that because of the energy waste. So do we increase heat? Does thermal mass help? Well, look at this building. It's a solid brick building built in like 1919 or something. 100 years later, we're still building buildings very much like this, single pane glazing and mass brick all across Australia. So is the thermal mass the problem, or will more thermal mass help? I'd say no. That bathroom had a lot of thermal mass, like all the walls in there were made of block, stone, masonry. So you need a lot of heat to warm up that thermal mass. What about more ventilation? Is that going to help? What about heat recovery ventilation? Would that help? Heat recovery ventilation? Should we get a fancy Zender unit? How about this simple Panasonic unit? Let's say, which of these ventilators, a heat recovery unit on the left and a simple exhaust fan on the right, which of these uses less energy? Audience replies, please. Let's see. Which of these uses less energy? Well, put both of these on a table, plug them in. Which one uses more energy? Anyone in the audience? Let me see. The one on the left, the heat recovery ventilator, uses more energy. Why? Well, it has two fans, and the heat being recovered from one airstream to the other is basically, during some weather conditions, like being placed on a table, there's zero energy to be recovered. So all you're doing is spending more energy on fan power. True. So if you put them both on the table and turn it on, the heat recovery ventilator uses more energy. What if you put the heat recovery ventilator in an extremely leaky house and turn it on? Which of these two fans uses more energy? The heat recovery ventilator. So it's not that heat recovery ventilators are great and they're required for things like passive house because, well, simple systems just don't work for in an ultra tight house for reasons that we won't get into here. But they really only make economic sense in a very tight house. Above that, in a leakier house, in most climates of Australia, they just don't make economic sense, at least not for energy savings. There's lots of other reasons why energy recovery ventilators, filtered, distributed, balanced ventilation is better, yes, but often it's not. The reason to do it is not the energy savings. So a bit more about ventilation. So one of these ventilators, this heat recovery ventilator here, is a constant ventilation system. Actually, both of these could be constant ventilation systems, but frequently in Australia, we have, actually in the code, we have a requirement for intermittent ventilation. when you take a shower, you need to have a bath fan that operates and takes all the moisture out of there. So after you're done with the shower, you turn the fan off. Is all the moisture gone? No way. Do you, like I have to in my apartment, see the squeegee on the bottom left here? I have been trained by my wife to squeegee the shower every shower. I do it. Swear to God, I squeegee my shower. I do. And these towels here, though, even if I squeegee and even if I towel this whole thing dry, the towels still have moisture in it. How long as soon as I turn the fan off, that moisture is going to go somewhere. It's going to go into the air, and then that moisture is going to condense on colder surfaces. So is intermittent ventilation enough? I would say no. Continuous ventilation is something that we need to increase use of in Australia. So continuous ventilation gets rid of dilute moisture that is gradually gathering just from breath, from things release moisture slowly over time, like your wet towels or laundry that isn't totally dry, or your raincoat or your umbrella in your house. It just dries off slowly over time and adds moisture. Now, remember I said we've been building buildings like this for 100 years, thermal mass, bad windows. Yes, here's another one. This one's roughly 100 years older than that one that we lived in Bondi. This is in Rosebery, New South Wales, near Sydney. So the last apartment in Bondi was 19 cubic meters per hour per square meter. This one is 2.8 cubic meters per hour per square meter. Super tight, wicked tight. So why didn't we get condensation? Why, when we were looking at places, did I say, after moving from the moldy Bondi apartment, the well-ventilated moldy Bondi apartment, why does this place not get condensation, even though it's many times tighter, but the Bondi apartment did? It's because of continuous ventilation that slowly dilutes interior generated moisture. Here's a picture when they were working on the fan. We got a notice they were going to work on the fans on the roof. They had to replace one of the motors, I think, and so this one fan pulls air from all the apartments below slowly and continuously. So when they're working on the fan, that condensation gathers on these 4 windows that are just not very good thermally performing. But as soon as I turn the ventilation back on, I wish I had time lapse of watching it slowly vanish. The condensation goes away because even in this very tight apartment, that moisture is being slowly removed. And this is why the code is creeping ever so slowly in the right direction towards condensation mitigation by getting continuous ventilation to be a requirement. So it's a simple system, fewer problems. But someone would ask, and builders ask, yeah, but when you add ventilation, doesn't that use energy? Yes, it does. It uses some energy for the fans, absolutely, but it even uses much more energy in some climates for the energy to heat or cool the air that you have to then replace with outside air. So yes, it uses energy. It is an energy penalty, you could say, or an energy expense. It is what you pay for reducing your condensation risk. So here's another person that I idolize, Joe Stiebrick from Building Science Corporation. Someone quoted him, the man, the legend, the final boss. He's awesome. Look up anything you can from this guy, Joe Stiebrick from Building Science Corporation. He has Building Science Corporation, just Google that. You will find just volumes and volumes, many books full of awesome building science insights, building science digests, research papers that they've published, all free, all in the name of educating the industry. That's where I got my building science education from. Really great. So one of the things he says is you can't get a free thermodynamic lunch. You can't just do stuff like tighten up the building and then expect everything to be totally the same or better. Or you can't reduce the temperature of your house because you want to save energy and expect to not get condensation. It's basically that we're dealing with energy flows here, and we're also we've changed the way that energy flows in modern buildings. We used to build buildings that were quite leaky, and we used to spend a lot more energy to heat them than we do now. The ones we use, we can keep houses comparatively much warmer for a lot less energy than we used to be able to. So we're also building out of much more sensitive materials, like highly digestible composite materials like OSB is a very digestible material. It's like chopped up little wood chips. If you're a mold species, if you're rubbing your hands saying, all right, can't give me some water, please. It's a little bit dry, but give me some water. I'll gobble that up. So he has some really common sense advice for you. Look him up. So I've taken you now through two apartments that we lived in. One in Bondi with lots of condensation, super leaky. One in Roseberry, super tight, but no condensation due to simple addition of continuous ventilation. So now here we are. I now am talking to you from Victoria, and it's freaking cold. It's cold, and I'm shivering, actually. So why did we move here? Well, this is the school district in outside Melbourne, and I wanted to move to a good school district for my son. So we got a pretty decent rent for what looked to be a nice house. You get 10 minutes to inspect the place during a real estate listing with 50 other people, literally 50 other people looking at this place. Everyone's wanting to apply for everything they can because you don't know what you're going to get. It's a really tough market for a renter right now. So all we want is just a comfortable place to put my kid in school. So but you know what? I have a blower door, so I'm gonna do a blower door test in my house. Holy moly, 30 permeability, 30 cubic meters per hour per square meter is the test result. That is bad. What's a good result? Remember I said passive house here on the far right is good. Well, we're over here on the far left here. That's like more than, what, 40 times worse than that? So it's way worse than passive house. It's way worse than any sort of building code. It's shockingly bad, and it's cold here. What am I to do? Well, I got an infrared camera. I got a blower door. I got flow meters. I got toilet paper. You see, actually, this is the favorite building science toilet paper tool for very crappy buildings is toilet paper, because the crappiest buildings need toilet paper to show the leaks. So we got air coming from the evaporative cooler. Evaporative coolers need to be replaced, I say, in most climates where they're currently used. We get air from these vents in the walls. We get air from the bath fans, air from the sliding cavity door near the bathroom, air from the cabinets around the ovens, air from the heating ducts. We got wall insulation. They did retrofit insulation into the walls, but it's slowly settling over time. You can see warm spots. It's where this spot here is 39 degrees pointing right there. That's hot. 39 degrees in some parts of this house. And then looking up at the roof, they have some, I believe it's a mixture of wool, like sheep's wool insulation that they blew into the roof. Well, it's not so fluffy anymore. So it's quite degraded. And the ceiling in some parts gets into the high 30s. So evaporative coolers, when I close the vents to keep the hot air from coming in during the day, because in this particular house, they didn't tell us before they rented. All they said was they put a thing in the listing that said the evaporative cooler is not working, is not part of the rental agreement. That's all they said. They didn't tell us that what they meant, or they probably didn't even know that the duct for the evaporative cooler was in fact torn, and it's just open right to the roof space upside. So in the roof. So it's just dumping hot attic air into our house all day long in the summer, and it's freezing cold in the winter. They don't tell you that in a real estate listing. They probably didn't know it themselves. This is the filter for the AC. Disgusting. this is the return. This is where the air conditioner, the furnace, the heated ducted heating sucks air from this place and also from the crawl space below. Like you can see daylight out here. Sometimes there's air coming from, it's sucking air from outside and heating it. It's just awful. This is the condition of the duct. It's extremely dusty because it's sucking air from the crawl space or the floor space below. Just shockingly bad. Also, let's talk about control layers. Here is this little multi-purpose room. That's how they market it. And the real estate listing, multi-purpose room. Look at that, renter. Are you excited about the multi-purpose room? It even has over here a TV outlet, and there's sockets everywhere to plug in your electronic devices and other precious things. Well, we put gym equipment there and our bikes. And luckily we didn't put anything precious there because first rainstorm we got, we see water dripping on the floor. So there's water coming through the walls, through this poorly sealed water over here too. When it rains, you get water in this place. How's this? There's not many purposes for this multi-purpose room. The water control layer is the problem here, obviously. And even when it's not raining, it hasn't been raining for a little while here, we get this beautiful mushroom formation in this room, right outside my window here. I cut it off and tried to save it, but it wilted. Tried to freeze it, didn't work. But it was a beauty. And it's slowly digesting the timber sill of this sliding window assembly, sliding door assembly. So where's that moisture coming from? It's obviously coming a bit from groundwater, but it's also coming from the bricks themselves. You can see here, it's a bit spotty. The water's coming up from the ground below, not by force of gravity. Water doesn't always flow downhill. Some forces are greater than gravity, like electrostatic forces. Capillary action pulls water up from below, where it evaporates into the air, and then that water vapor condenses. You can't really see through the window here, but it's a bright sunny day out here, bright sunny morning. Condensation on the windows, bright sunny morning. The reason is it's a clear sky, and so all the heat from this room is radiating to outer space through that clear sky, and as it leaves that energy, takes that energy, the water vapor in the air gives it that energy and condenses on the glass. So where's that coming from? Well, that's a water control issue. What if my wife actually, for a hot second, I thought, oh, well, let's add a fan. Let's add a fan to dry out the condensation. Does that sound like a good idea? I'll ask the audience. Does it sound like a good idea to add a fan to dry the condensation here so that we don't get condensation on the windows? Is that going to help things? Well, yes, if you added a fan here, it would dry the condensation away, and you probably wouldn't get these little plants growing here on the windowsill. This is ridiculous, but we get these little seedlings here growing. So the water's coming from the condensation, dribbling down into here, and then the dust or whatever that's settled in here over time provides food for these little plants. If we added a fan, that would dry that out, but so that would stop these little plants from growing. But where is the water? Has to go somewhere. Where's the water going to go? I'll talk about it. Another thing we could do is just dump heat into here. This is actually what's been designed here. They added, when they retrofitted ducted heating to this place, they added the duct to this multi-purpose room, and I since plugged it up because I thought, well, there's no way in hell I'm going to just dump heat right outside. Yes, that would make that remotely more habitable, but I'm not doing that. So that means we would, in order to use this to mitigate condensation, we would have to run that very inefficient gas ducted heating to dry this place out. Not a good way to do this. So how are we going to fix this problem? Well, these are ways that I'm dealing with this. So, I mean, I'm not dealing with this. Waterproofing from liquid water, obviously, from above and from around the sill would help. Site drainage, drain the water away from the building in the first place. If we could extend the eaves away to get that water as far away from the foundation as possible. Waterproofing from water vapor from below. What they did was retrofit this multi-purpose room onto an existing patio. The patio wasn't built with a vapor barrier, like a sheet of heavy plastic underneath, like it should be in a slab to keep water from moving through the slab by or through this masonry by capillary action. It should do that. This is not a room built to building code. Shouldn't be marketed by the real estate as if it was built to code. It's not. So what we do, we have to elevate everything off the floor, even things that you wouldn't think are moisture sensitive. Like these are some pink bats that I intend to use. This here is just some core flute, it's like a coil of core flute stood on edge here. So it's elevated off the floor. Anything that touches the floor and prevents that water from evaporating out like it's going to do is going to, water's going to gather underneath this. So I thought about this too late, left this plastic on these bricks here, and I intend to go up, pull the plastic up. I expect to see a square print of condensation underneath this when I go move this plastic, because it's preventing the water from evaporating from this masonry. So nothing that's remotely moisture sensitive, even metal. These metal shelves here, storage shelves, have little plastic boots underneath. That's what you need, because the condensation or the water from these bricks is going to get in contact and corrode the metal in contact with the floor. Other things that we do, so anything remotely moisture sensitive, no cardboard in the place. No way, because if we add the fan, like I said, it's going to dry the condensation off the windows, but that moisture is going to go somewhere. So what is the next most energetically favorable place to go? The cardboard. It's very energetic, very electrostatically attractive to water molecules. It's going to just get gobbled up by mold if we were to use the fan to simply dry off the condensation from the windows, or if all we did was add heat to that room. It would in fact make it more prone to mold. So mold would grow even faster because now it has temperature to help it. So even inorganic materials can host mold. So like mold and other growing things. So I just put a picture of some high-tech t-shirts that you can get. Anyone notice that if you have some high-performance clothes and you go running in your high-performance tee, your special one you get from Under Armour, it starts to stink right away? Why does it stink so fast? It's because the oils in your skin, in your sweat, and other oils and proteins in your skin are quite digestible to the bacteria that live everywhere. And so they are going to start to gobble up those nutrients and make their bacterial smells. That's why even this high-tech quick dry thing, these high-tech shirts, at least in my experience, start to stink right away. Even something I have some climbing ropes that they're all nylon. There's nothing digestible by mold here, but if you ever use a rope outside, it's going to get dust on it, and the dust has digestible things in it. The ropes will gather mold if given enough time and moisture and warmth, because the digestible content of the dust is going to be gobbled up by the mold. So what we do is we minimize added moisture. If there's a bike, I'm not joking. If it rains and we have our bikes in this room here, I under the shaded carport, I bounce the bike to shake off whatever moisture I can before we put it into that space. If we have an umbrella that we need to dry, we dry it outside. We don't dry it in that space. Whatever water we can avoid adding to that space, we try to avoid it. We watch the weather. When the absolute humidity, we're not talking relative humidity here, we're talking absolute humidity, is lower than the absolute humidity outside, when the outside absolute humidity is lower than the humidity inside, we open the windows, turn on the fans to flush as much of that interior humidity out. So is energy efficiency possible in this multi-purpose room that they've marketed to us? No way. Either you can dump heat into the place, or you can have it be absolutely totally open to the outside whenever possible, but it's never going to be comfortable and mold free in there. Never. So it's here's another. When I moved into this place, I got some. Finally met up with Tim Forsey because I moved down to Melbourne, and Tim Forsey runs the My Efficient Electric Home Facebook group. I'm sure many of you are members, and he's just about to publish his book. There's an event for any of you who are in the Melbourne area next month. So it's he's launching his book and is going to give a talk on it. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see the book. I'm sure it's full of lots of good, simple advice. So Tim came and gave me some ideas what we can do here. So he said we had a lot of similar ideas, but he actually was a bit braver than I was. I was just going to say, well, I asked the landlord when I moved in. So I have some connections that could get me some discount insulation. And I know a bit about air sealing myself. Can I do some air sealing and insulating? And you just pay for the materials. I'll do all the labor myself. Don't worry about it. And she said, I think we could work something out. Okay, cool. Well, Tim says, yeah, don't stop there, Sean. Insulate and air seal, yes, of course. Material cost and labor done. Material cost to the landlord, labor done by tenant. Pretty good deal, if you ask me. But Tim said, no, Sean, you've got gas ducted heating. It's wicked inefficient. I know that. He said, now's your chance. Ask them to install reverse cycle AC. You can get government incentives for this. Really, almost 50% of the cost paid for by incentives. Pretty great. I got a couple of quotes for it. Had a couple of contractors come to look at the place. If we put reverse cycle AC in the remainder of the house, we could decommission the evaporative cooling system, which I told you is not functional and just leaking air to the great outdoors. We could decommission the ducted heating system in the floor, which is not doing, it's a pretty inefficient system. We could convert the hot water system to a hot water electric heat pump hot water system. Would love to do that. Decommission the gas entirely, and then convert everything to electric. That's my dream. Let's go electric. Well, what did the landlord say? No, I don't care. I don't care about you. I don't care about anything. All I care about is using this as a negative gearing mechanism here. I know I'm losing a lot of money on this. We bought the house for 1.5 million, and we're only charging you $650 a week in rent. So I know I'm losing lots and lots of money on this, but that's okay because my husband works for Moderna, and we make too much money to know what to do with, so we can take the loss. I don't care, is what they said. They pulled back their offer to pay for the installation and said, no, we're not doing anything. Don't touch the building. So what do? Well, I whip out my flow meter and my blower door and I say, well, F this, I'm going to town on this. I'm measuring the heck out of this. I measure the exact flows from the bath fans. There's 3 fans in the ceiling here. I measure the flow from each cooling duct separately. There's a lot of cooling system leakage. So remember, I measured the whole permeability at 30. Well, the cooling system represents 19% of that total. As you measured the bath fans, those 3 fans represent 11% of that total of 30. There are heating ducts. Each one of those leaks a little bit, and a big heating return with quite a lot of leakage. That heating return, which I showed you, doesn't connect to the floor completely. So that's about 4% of the total, not a small amount. And then there are wall vents all over this place, not needed anymore because we don't allow unvented combustion appliances, thank goodness, because we don't want people to die or suffer the negative effects of carbon monoxide long-term exposure. So wall vents everywhere that can be sealed, especially this one over here, which says do not seal. I sealed it because I know what it's for, and there used to be a stove, fireplace here. There is not anymore. So that's where we put. I sealed this up, and with a removable seal. So I am going to town on this. I'm going to seal the heck out of it. Look at this is ducts. Pull up if you have heated ducted heating. Please do this. Pull up the register from your. This red bit is called a register. This black bit is called a register boot. It's the connection of the duct to the interior finish. The gap between the register boot and the interior finish, it's called out in building codes abroad that specifically has to be sealed. Here, there's no such provision or training of builders. Your house might have this. It's easy to fix. What I did with some Tight House Uripa silver tape was taped this connection to the register register boot, taped that, and once you put the register back on, you can't see it. So it's out of sight, out of mind. I guarantee you, no one's ever going to look under there for the rest of this building's life. The other thing I did was, here's one way to do this. This is a video from Efficiency Matrix, to take some backer rod and poke this down into these vents here in the wall. It's removable by a renter. The other thing that I did, which because I couldn't find backer rod that would fit there properly, and it was too fat, and so it wasn't slipping into there. So I just took some cheapo painter's tape and poked it in this way, and then cut it to size and sealed that. And I used a wooden spoon to poke it in there and get a good seal. After that, when I need to leave this place, I'm going to use a kitchen fork. If anyone ever asks, they say, "Hey, you sealed up these vents, and we want them to leak air for the next tenant." I can use a kitchen fork, and 10 minutes later, I can have all these things scraped out, all the masking tape scraped out of these, no problem. So that's what I did for those vents throughout the whole building. This is the evaporative cooler. A very, remember I said this is 19% of the total of the leakage in this place. And you can see here, this is during winter time. So there's so much, I'm poking fog, and it's going straight up this here, and it's going straight out to the great outdoors. So what I did was I took some trash bags. This is a couple bats of polyester, non-toxic polyester insulation. You could use a cheap pillow if you didn't want to buy a whole bag of insulation. Some pillows from Kmart. Stuff these bags full, and now it just doesn't leak anymore. So the fog just hangs around. So this does two things. It dramatically reduces the air leakage from this evaporative cooler. It also adds insulation, where you can see from this red hot picture here in the summertime, there's no insulation in this whole thing, and it's basically exposed to the roof. So this adds insulation there, and the thermal bypass of this is greatly reduced. So I'm glad I did this. As well as this, we took some contact paper, some like book cover clear contact, and put it over these things. If the landlord asks before I leave, "Hey, what's that stuff? Can you remove that?" I'll go and remove it. So that's what I'm gonna have to do if they kick us out. Yeah, so pretty bad. This is actually not the perfect picture here, because this is a bath fan here with a heat lamp. I should not cover this heat lamp with heat. It's a bath fan with heat lamps in it. I should not cover this with a draft stopper. This is one from Tight House. But there is one of these in the kitchen, which 24/7 just leaks straight to the roof. You can actually see daylight. If you look up, if you're standing underneath it, you can see daylight into the roof from below. So we can put this draft stopper on it, and it will greatly cut down on the leakage. So that's another pretty inexpensive thing to do. Seal around this with a bit of spray foam. Invest in a spray foam gun. There's lots of other stuff I wish I could do. Like, look how crappy this ductwork is here. It's all twisted and smooshed. This goes to the ensuite over here. And I can tell you, you get very, very, very little flow from this. The bathroom is cold because it's such a long duct run, and it's crimped and it's twisted. So it's just too restricted to get any airflow through there. So that's why the ensuite is perpetually freezing or hot in the summer. And the same with the master bedroom. It never gets comfortable because of the crappy ductwork layout. So what I wish we could do is insulate the uninsulated floor. You can see here, total no insulation in the entire house. Once this will have faith, folks, we will get incentives for underfloor insulation back. If anyone knows has any beta, any info on how soon that's going to be, let me know, because I'm going to get my landlord to get some underfloor insulation because the floors in this place are freezing. Going to re-insulate this ceiling here with this crappy degraded wool insulation, fix the ductwork, or I wish convert this to electric heat pump. Those are the things on my wish list, on my quest. So the ways forward for this building science, we can educate the building industry, the retrofit industry. Like, if you get a ducted heating system, you can retrofit the heating system to have better air sealing of the registers to the boots, or otherwise do better duct work, duct layouts. Lots of improvements in duct work that we can do. That's some building science education. We can educate them on proper proper water management. We can use improved codes with some simple provisions, like we should have continuous ventilation in all buildings, I think, to reduce risk of moisture damage. Improve rental laws to empower tenants and give them some say in this. So right now, I'm just a tenant who has a don't care landlord. We're freezing here. We're spending a lot on energy, and I wish we could encourage them to do something with this burden of investment they have right now to help their poor tenants not be so freezing. And we should provide incentives, not just to electrify the building, but to improve the fabric performance. So not just adding solar and batteries and electrifying everything. That's not the only thing we need to do. We also need to improve the building envelope. Otherwise, we're just using bigger batteries and more solar and more energy. So improving the fabric performance would help us all. So I want to leave on this some condensation truths or myths, maybe some topics for discussion if anyone has any questions. Let me know if we have time to answer questions. Don't know what time it is. Not really. I talked the whole time. Sorry.
You've got one question in the Q&A there if you want to have a peek at that, Sean.
Sure. Could one install continuous ventilation to an old house? Yes, you could, absolutely. And however, you could do it if I would not install continuous ventilation to this house, because even after we seal it, it's probably still going to be a permeability of about 20 after we do all that sealing. So I don't think it needs continuous ventilation. There's just so much air leakage in this house that the moisture gets diluted just by air leakage. Not good, but I don't think continuous ventilation is necessary in this case. If you have condensation problems, continuous ventilation can help, especially from the source where the condensation is the worst. So I gotta be careful if I say more ventilation is always better, because sometimes there's some types of ventilation that are not good. Like there's a system that's in use in New Zealand to take air from the roof space because it's slightly warmer than the air outdoors and use that to push air using heat recovery, this is not a good idea. Not a good place to be sucking air from the roof space and putting into your house. So that kind of ventilation, not good. Also, some kinds of ventilation like it depends. Would retrofitting double glazing help condensation? Yes. Yes, David. We have ducted AC in part of our house. The return vent is inside. Would it make sense to add an option to draw outside air into the return vent for better ventilation? Well, that's, Jens, that is one option in the building code, in some codes abroad. Yes, absolutely. You can get your makeup air or your supply of fresh air from integrated into your AC. Absolutely. There are some that would use some that run the air handler. The air handler is the big blower. Run it on a timer, so every at least 20 minutes out of every hour or 10 minutes out of every hour to circulate fresh air through the house. And at that time, the damper would open, so that you should get a little more advanced than just having a hole to the outside. A motorized damper is the ideal way to do that. And that's common code compliance method in, say Southeast US, like Florida. A lot of them have a fresh air damper on the return side. So it's taking air from hot, humid air from outside, and it runs it over the cooling coils so that humidity gets removed by the cooling coil. So you get fresh, dehumidified outdoor air to your system, to your house. That's one way, a very smart way of doing it. Can you put a vapor barrier on the underfloor insulation to prevent moisture ingress? Yes, you can. You could also, there's just a whole lot, Tej. You should look up, there's a term that they use in America called crawl space for what we call an underfloor space or subfloor space here. Crawl space. Look up crawl space venting. You'll see decades of debate about this. And basically, Alison Bales from Energy Vanguard, that one, A House Needs to Breathe, or does it? That guy. He says, we have this obsession with venting the heck out of crawl space. Basically, a good way to do it ultimately is to put a vapor barrier on the ground of the crawl space below, thick plastic, like 6-10 mil plastic. Mil meaning thousandths of an inch. I mean, so I don't know what that is in microns, but thick plastic on the floor to prevent that moisture ingress from seeping up. The ground is constantly giving off water vapor by evaporation. Keep that condensation down, and then insulate over that and insulate the walls of this crawl space to make it completely sealed from the outside environment with high density spray foam. And they make spray foam now, which is much, much healthier than it ever has been before, and low carbon footprint and low global warming potential. High density spray foam on the floor of the underfloor space and the walls in the underfloor space. Look up unvented crawl space. Okay, check it out. There's a lot of information on this. Keith says, is it possible or cost effective to retrofit to passive house standard? Well, the only way to retrofit to passive house standard is to gut the entire house. There's no other way to do it. Because usually, like you might say, your house might not have the bones, meaning like the walls might not actually be thick enough to do it. But you'd need to, I mean, it depends on what you're starting with, but I would say probably not cost effective to retrofit to passive house standard, unless your intention is to do a gut retrofit. Otherwise, it's not cost effective. We are in an old double brick house, 1942. What's your take on pumped in insulation? I'm concerned about the wicking, condensation, and also derating existing electrical cables. Yeah, the electrical cables are, sometimes the electricity is a bit questionable. There's insulation all throughout the walls of this house, right? And I can see where they injected it from the outside through the brickwork, where they drilled through the brick and then put whatever in through the walls. You saw from the infrared photos that it has settled over time. Um, it's very questionable electricity in this house. Like, if I'm in this room and the clothes washer and the microwave are on at the same time, the power to my computer cuts out. Like, how the hell does that happen? Clothes washer and the microwave cannot be on at the same time. Otherwise, like, half the house loses power. So yes, sometimes something as simple as, can I add more insulation? You might want to make sure all your electricity is really well sorted out before you do something like that. Wicking. So some insulation is more sensitive to wicking than others, like some cellulose insulation, like recycled paper insulation. I think it's a fantastic material. It's wonderful, and I've used it as a retrofit. But if you have moisture problems, you need to deal with those first before you insulate, before you do anything. Because yes, any insulation you add can hide those problems and make them fester and make it worse. So some types of insulation, like glass fiber, doesn't wick as much as, say, cellulose does. But still, you should always, the biggest problems in buildings are water, and water. Deal with that first. So do you think that insulating properly the building will help under a thermal and condensation point of view? Yes. Yes. So we could add more insulation to the walls of this place. Gosh, the plasterboard seems awfully thin here. When I tap the window, when I tap the wall, I can hear the windows rattling in their frames. Very old timber windows here. If we retrofitted double glazing and more insulation, yes, that would reduce potential for condensation on these surfaces. Keith says, we never appear to have mold anywhere in Northeast Victoria, but often feel that the house may need more insulation. Would reducing airflow help? Reducing air leakage? So insulation and air leakage are two different things, but yes, air sealing will help. I mean, that's the first thing, pretty much the only thing I can do here as a tenant is reduce air leakage. Like, I could reduce it by a factor of 2-3 times in this house and still not be in any danger of condensation, because it's still leaky as heck in this place. So reducing airflow or air leakage would help in this house and may help in your house. One way to find out is to get a blower door test. If that's maybe that's a ripe fruit to pick from your energy savings tree. If you get some air sealing, if you get a blower door test, you can find out really where the problems are. Sometimes it's kind of shocking what happens. There's some cool, creepy videos of fog leaking straight up through the floorboards, like in a Michael Jackson Thriller video. It's like, yeah, it's very eerie. So your house might be like that. Is it worth replacing old single glazed windows with UPVC windows? I would say, in terms of energy savings, don't do it for the energy savings point of view. It's not that it won't save you energy, it absolutely will. And even more than the window itself, in addition to the window itself being an energy saver, there's two things that it does. One, so the window will save energy, but also make sure that you take the opportunity to use low expansion foam around whatever windows are retrofitted in to make sure that they're well sealed to the frame. So make sure that you tackle the air leakage around the windows at the same time that you retrofit the windows. But two things it's going to do. It's going to reduce condensation risk. It's also going to improve comfort, because it's going to raise the mean radiant temperature in the house. Mean radiant temperature is the sum or the average of all the surface temperatures in your house. It's actually one thing they use their standards for how you calculate that. But what this means is, the reason why you can be in a patio at a pub, sitting outside and feeling not too cold, is that you have the gas heater, which is above you, and it's radiating its heat down to you. So that's radiation that you're feeling here. The mean radiant temperature of a single glazed window is quite low. So you're radiating your heat, your body heat, to that cold surface, and that's making you colder. That's absolutely, by doing double glazed windows, you're going to raise that interior temperature. It's going to make you feel more comfortable. They might also be less drafty, the windows themselves, so that could improve comfort, as well as the seal around the windows. So those are two comfort benefits. But in terms of long-term energy savings, don't do this because you think that it's going to have your energy bills. It might have your energy bills related to the windows themselves, but it's often not the biggest energy user in your whole house. So unless it is, but it's almost never going to be the one thing that pays for itself, at least not in the lifetime of the windows. Hate to say it. Do it for property value, do it for comfort, do it for operability, like your damn old timber windows just won't open and close anymore. They keep getting stuck. Do it for other reasons. Don't do it simply for the energy savings. There's lots of other benefits to having new windows.
Excuse me, Sean, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we'll take some questions from the audience in Ashfield now. You're
Sure.
okay?
Hi, Sean. It's Damien here. I was hoping you could tell me what are the protocols around doing blower door testing on behalf of renters?
Well, the protocol is you get an ATTMA tester. So ATTMA, ATTMA, just look up ATTMA Australia, ATTMA Australia tester.
But
And you'll
is
find
it,
a listing of all the testers. And the protocol, or the way to do it, is you mount the blower door, just like in the picture. You put the blower door in the front door, you close all the exterior doors and windows, you turn off all the AC systems, things like that, anything that's moving air in and out of the house, and you turn the fan on, and then you measure the number, but you also go around and look for leaks and find out what is the worst, what is the most addressable, where could these, often you find through air leaks, you find other related problems. So a lot of, especially in kitchens, a lot of pathways for air leakage also happen to be pathways for pests. So that's how you do a test and what you can find from a test. It's really, someone else asked, what's the ballpark cost of one of those tests? I don't know. There was a guy a little while ago, Peter Shea from Blower Door Services and Sophie Shea from Blower Door Services. There's in Sydney, there's Stefan Paramo out there. There's a bunch of testers in Sydney now. If you look up the ATTMA listings, the cost used to be about $500. It might be a little bit more now. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're really looking for the final number, and you need to calculate an answer, it might be a little bit more than if you just want to know ballpark what it is and can you help me find the leaks. That might be a little less.
Sean, it's more around the dealing with the landlords and the real estate agents that I was asking about. So if I was doing it on behalf of a renter, can I just go in and do a blower door test for a renter?
Are you the one owning the blower door?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you should join ATTMA. And we would love to have you among our ranks. And it really depends. Like I don't ask permission.
Right.
Like if you're doing it for a renter, I just wouldn't ask. Like the landlord's not going to know. And if you're doing it, it qualifies as a non-destructive test. It's called. I mean, do make sure that you know what you're doing. Because there are ways you can mess up, like do a test in negative pressure and suck ashes into the house from a fireplace. That's bad. So, there are ways to screw it up. But I basically wouldn't ask. I would just do it.
Okay, Sean, we've got our next question.
Yep.
Sean, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, it's Bridget here. I'm about to renovate, but I'm still struggling with the continuous ventilation concept. Is that some sort of, it's not a heat recovery system, but it is a mechanized pump that is continuously.
Yep. Oh, it's just, I mean, do I have one in my, no, it's, I often have at the ready, a Panasonic whisper ceiling fan. Let me just look it up here. So here, I'll just show you. I'll go to Bunnings website because they sell it now.
That's something you put in every room?
No, you put it in one room, and it basically draws air from the
It
wettest
can-
room in your house.
Can be
put
your
it in one
bathroom
bathroom.
exhaust.
Yeah, constant bathroom exhaust. So this comes from America. If you take the cover off, you'd see inside there's actually flow rates. You can nominate a continuous flow rate, and then when you turn the switch on, it goes to boost flow rate, so you get full flow. Efficiency Matrix is going to have a video that I go over fans that we talk about different types of fans. They're going to have a video on YouTube soon about this in the next couple of weeks.
Sorry, who's that?
And Efficiency Matrix on YouTube. So, sorry, Matrix, YouTube. They have a lot of awesome videos on all sorts of energy efficiency topics, retrofit included. And they're going to making one on, they're actually doing a video on the things we did to my house, the house that we're renting. And here's one on how to seal wall vents, common bathroom problems, wind washing explained, like lots of really great videos. So that's a good YouTube channel for you.
Right.
Really digestible
so the
stuff.
Panasonic one, that would just go in the laundry bathroom, is that right?
That's right. Well, the laundry or the bathroom, or just do one. And I would pick your most used bathroom to put it in that. So you just take the exhaust fan that's in there and you replace it with a better fan. These ones are very efficient and they work well against, they have a backdraft damper right on them, and you connect them to a run of crappy ductwork and they still work. They're really awesome quality products.
And it just runs continuously.
Yes, and you can select the rate at which it runs. So if the lowest setting will get rid of your condensation problem, then use that setting because that's the least energy intensive. If you need more, then you turn it up. But they're really quiet, really energy efficient, made for continuous use. Awesome.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next question, Sean, from Robert.
G'day, Sean. Thank you very much for all your talk, sharing advice. So I'm renovating a 60s brick veneer house, and we did a blower door test from Peter, got a result of about 20, gave him suggestion of things to do, working for a great enthusiastic builder, and we're going through and doing things. And I was wondering if you could share from your experience what sort of improvement you get from various things that you can do in terms of the air change power. Like, for example, we found from Tight House, you can get boxes to retrofit switches. But talking to the Sparky today, he's concerned about the space for cables. And I'm thinking that the switches are pretty tight in the wall and maybe it'd only get, I don't know, 1 or 0.5 of a change. As I said, we're doing the things. Floorboards, we've got the floorboards. I'm reluctant to use spray foam because I've got a Rello does inspections, and one of the problems with spray foam, it's permanently in. I've put polyester insulation underneath. I'm wondering if, given what you said about water vapor, I might have to put some wrapping underneath the floors if I'm still leaky. So I'm kind of curious to know what my best bang for buck things I should be doing are, and where I might end up in terms of a number before I do another test.
This is so. How significant is your retrofit?
So I've just installed a ducted ventilation system. I'm going to pump in insulation into the brick veneer cavity walls. I'm going to add insulation to basically all the surfaces. I'm removing the kitchen, all the fans, because I'm doing ducted ventilation, removing all the fans. I'm getting a range hood with a makeup unit. The people from the mob in Melbourne, I've just forgotten their name.
Fantech?
Not Fantech, the other ones. Whisper.
Yep.
They're the only ones in the market that do a makeup air unit with a range hood. So I'm putting that into the bathroom. But yeah, I'm doing the things that Peter suggested in his report. We putting in spray foam in all the gaps, but in addition, we took out all skirting boards and architraves and used a Provana climate tape to seal the junctions, because I understand that the foam might crack over time and that would do a bit of leakage. But with a tape over the top, it should stop it leaking because the tape can move up to 1.5 centimeters.
Sure.
Is my
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that all sounds like good advice you're getting. So, yes, I mean, basically what you have the money for. Like, I just did a training with some builders that are trying to do, they're trying to get to they're trying to do Green Star homes, which is a rating system, a standard from Green Building Council, and they had a permeability of 8 to start with, which is not good, but it's not hopeless. So what were the main things in that house? Well, the bath fans, each one leaked a lot. So they had 3 fans in there. So right there, if they did that, if they fixed those bath fans with good units with good dampers on them, the leakage would be cut down almost all the way to the required 5 that they need to get to. So that's number one thing. I think that's the probably biggest single point source of leakage you could deal with. Others would be if you have access to, if you have skirting removed, absolutely use caulk, use tape if you can. I mean, tape is good. It's expensive though. I gotta say it's expensive, and you do have to install it well. It is more durable than caulk, or if installed well, it's more durable than foam and or caulk. If it's installed well, the surface has to be prepared well. It has to be clean, so that the adhesive has to stick to something that's going to stay there, not just dust. So the surface has to be very, very well cleaned. Usually can be just brushed dry, or even wiped with a lightly damp cloth. But the surface does have to be clean for tape to stick well. You got to use good quality tape. Any old cloth tape from Bunnings won't stand the test of time, especially if it sees any heat ever. So the ProClimate tapes are excellent. I used to work for ProClimate. The tapes are awesome. I use them for everything not building related. They're fantastic tapes. They're just wicked expensive. It's like $50 a roll, 60, $70 a roll. It's crazy, but it's really good. So if you can afford to use the tapes, use that. If not, if you just, what I showed the builders, I said, after we did this one house, I said, well, let's look at one that's under construction. Like next time, how do you do better for the least cost? What's the cheapest thing you can do? Get yourself a good foam gun. I don't know if you can see this. Here, I'll put it in front of my face here. Here's a foam gun. This has a metal barrel. It's metal, high quality, but there's many manufacturers of this, including domestic manufacturers of the polyurethane foam that made in Australia. So, but an actual foam gun. Take care of this, and it'll last you many years, and you get really good at using this. You can highly control the flow with it. Really awesome stuff. Now, I don't agree that it cracks and becomes detached. I think that concern is a bit overblown, and it's sold to you by sellers of tape. Again, I'll say tape is better, but for very low cost, that'll do you better than nothing. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Do we have any more questions here? One last question, Sean.
Hi, Sean. Hi,
sure.
Sean. Just resealing my all our getting retiles done, sarking, and putting more insulation in the roof. Is there any other recommendations that you have for when you're doing roofs?
If you have access to the space under the roof before the roof is done, like if you can get into the roof, like if there's insulation there, you're going to have insulation on your ceiling flat, is it?
Yeah, we've just got we've put in all the wool insulation bats, covering all of the ceiling area, above the ceiling area.
Is the ceiling flat?
The ceiling is pitched with.
Oh, it is pitched. Okay.
And we've got Yeah, hip roof with, so there'd be new sarking because there's absolutely nothing left of it. It's all deteriorated. It's about 120-year-old
Yep.
Federation home. So we have to put the tiles back by council say that we can only do tiles or slate, but we're sticking with tiles. So it'll be tiles, sarking, a
Yep.
permeable sarking and the wool insulation.
Yeah, I would use permeable sarking or a roof membrane. Absolutely. I would look at some of the material from ProClima that they've been doing recently on roof assemblies. If you have the money to pay for a better roof assembly to promote liquid water drainage, and then promote ventilation to dry out any water that inevitably gets under the surface. That's some very good material that they have there. So there's a series of articles called, here, let me just look for it. It's above sheathing ventilation, above ProClima, above sheathing ventilation. And it's great. So Jesse Clark is a great communicator, and this is great
You're not
material.
sharing the screen at the moment, Sean. Can you share your screen?
Ah, shoot, sorry guys, thanks.
We've got a couple of whirlybirds up there while you're sharing your screen. They're still good to have as well.
I would look up, so here's another thing. So crawl space to vent or not. And then also roof space, or in the US they call it attic, to vent or not. I would say no. Attic venting, what to know, how to improve it. Let's see, to vent or not to vent. Here's a great one. Building science insights. Remember I said the man, the legend, the final boss.
Wix gives you the power of AI to
Joe Seabrook
build the website you need.
He has a great talk on this. Building to vent or not to vent.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll have a look at it.
Sorry, it's a long conversation, but there's so much stuff about the unvented roof myths. By myth, just look up roof venting. There was another question about where can we get the foam gun? I believe they sell them at Bunnings.
I think, Sean, I think we'll bring it to a close now. We've had lots of questions.
Forever.
Yeah. Look, it's been really great. You've given us all some practical insights through your own experiences, which has been really good. And we thank you so much. So if we could just give a hand for Sean for his talk.
Okay, I hear it. Thunderous applause. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks and cheers.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
everyone.